Throughout history, civilizations have risen to remarkable heights, only to gradually fade from prominence. Understanding why this happens requires looking beyond dramatic events to examine the slow accumulation of stress within complex societies. Most civilizations do not collapse suddenly. Instead, they experience a long period of declining adaptability, where problems that were once manageable become increasingly difficult to solve. The systems that once ensured stability begin to strain under their own weight. Consider the environmental pressures that many societies have faced. Agricultural civilizations depend entirely on consistent harvests to feed their populations. When soil fertility declines, when irrigation systems accumulate salt deposits, or when rainfall patterns shift, the foundation of society begins to weaken. And evidence from archaeological sites shows that many ancient communities experienced gradual environmental degradation over generations. Economic strain often accompanies these environmental challenges. As productivity falls, maintaining the same level of infrastructure becomes more costly. Roads need repair, canals require cleaning, and defensive structures must be maintained. Yet the resources to fund these necessities grow scarcer. Historians suggest that societies in decline often face a widening gap between what their institutions require and what their economies can provide. Administrative complexity presents another challenge. As civilizations grow, they develop more specialized roles, more layers of bureaucracy, and more elaborate systems of organization. These structures solve important problems, but they also create new costs. The research points to a pattern where administrative overhead continues to expand even as the society's productive capacity begins to contract. Social cohesion tends to fray under sustained pressure. When economic opportunities narrow, competition for resources intensifies. Trust between different groups may erode. The shared understanding that once united communities can fragment into competing interests. Evidence indicates that this internal division makes collective action increasingly difficult precisely when it becomes most necessary. The loss of adaptability may be the most crucial factor. Successful civilizations develop specific ways of organizing themselves, specific technologies, and specific responses to challenges. These approaches work well under certain conditions. But when circumstances change, societies must be able to modify their systems. Evidence suggests that declining civilizations often become locked into patterns that no longer serve them well, yet prove difficult to abandon. Tax systems provide a clear example. When revenues fall, governments face a choice. They can reduce services or they can attempt to extract more from a shrinking base. Historians have documented cases where increasing tax pressure further weakened economic activity, creating a cycle that proved hard to break. Infrastructure tells a similar story. Maintaining complex systems of roads, water supply, and public buildings requires sustained investment. As resources become scarcer, maintenance is often deferred. Small problems compound into larger ones. Eventually, the infrastructure that once connected and supported society begins to fail. Knowledge and technical skill can also be lost during decline. Specialized crafts, engineering techniques, and organizational knowledge depend on continuous transmission from one generation to the next. When institutions weaken, when trade networks contract, or when economic disruption prevents training, valuable capabilities can disappear surprisingly quickly. The pace of decline varies considerably. Some societies experience gradual contraction over centuries. Others face more rapid deterioration within a few generations. The specific trajectory depends on the particular combination of pressures each civilization faces and the resilience of its institutions. What becomes clear from studying these patterns is that civilizational decline rarely stems from a single cause. Instead, multiple factors interact and reinforce each other. Environmental stress reduces economic productivity. Economic weakness undermines institutions. Weakened institutions struggle to maintain infrastructure. Failing infrastructure further damages the economy. These feedback loops can prove difficult to interrupt. It is important to recognize the limitations of our understanding. The historical record is incomplete. We reconstruct past societies from fragmentary evidence. Different scholars interpret the same information in different ways. What appears as a pattern may be an artifact of what has been preserved and what has been lost. Nevertheless, certain themes appear repeatedly across different times and places. Civilizations that lose their ability to adapt, that accumulate unresolved problems, and that see their institutions become brittle rather than flexible, tend to experience decline. The process is gradual, built from countless small failures rather than singular catastrophes. Understanding these patterns does not diminish the achievements of past societies. And the fact that civilizations eventually decline does not erase what they accomplished during their time. It simply reflects the reality that all human systems exist within changing conditions, and sustaining complex organization over long periods presents extraordinary challenges. The choices societies make during periods of stress matter deeply. How leaders allocate scarce resources, whether institutions can reform themselves, and if communities maintain cooperation, all influence outcomes. Some civilizations managed to delay decline through adaptation. Others renewed themselves by fundamentally restructuring their approach. The capacity for collective problem-solving and willingness to change established patterns often determined whether societies could navigate through difficult transitions or succumbed to accumulating pressures. That yet even successful adaptation requires favorable conditions and sustained effort over generations. The historical evidence suggests that civilizational decline results from the slow accumulation of pressures that overwhelm a society's capacity to respond. No single event causes the end. Instead, multiple stresses compound over time until the systems that once provided stability can no longer function as they did. This understanding, drawn from fragmentary records and careful analysis, reminds us that complexity requires constant maintenance, and adaptability remains essential for endurance.